It's time for Mailbag Show Indiana Week. As you could guess, we're talking quarterbacks. Coming up.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Head to FanDuel.com to get started.
Okay, welcome in. It is Thursday. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone in Omaha is with me. We've got a mailbag show. It's a mailbag Thursday. Friday will be our predictions show. I am off to Indiana for the Nebraska-Indiana game kickoff. By way of Denver. I was thinking of ways that I could get out of this, like ways that I could get out of that flight path. Like if maybe I could get to the airport on Friday morning and convince them to send me a different route. That's a possibility. We'll see. Well, I will report back when we do our first post Nebraska-Indiana podcast. But we've got a mailbag show today. Predictions coming on Friday. Want to start this off with the question from a couple of weeks back that I held on to in the mailbag. It's from Shane in Columbus, Nebraska. And Shane was reacting to the Illinois coaches in Nebraska's lone loss of the season. And he believes that the Illinois offensive coaches out-schemed Nebraska by using a mobile quarterback to get outside the pocket and make the Nebraska defense look silly at times. Wouldn't disagree. Luke Altmaier does a nice job of making a lot of teams look silly. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten. So the question from Shane, do the Huskers play more mobile quarterbacks this season? He remembers that Wisconsin did this to Tony White's defense last year with Tanner Mordecai in that 24-17 overtime win in Madison. Maybe the blueprint to beating Tony White's defense is doing it with mobile quarterbacks.
Well, to answer the question about playing more mobile quarterbacks this year, everybody's got a little bit of it, like the capability, I guess, to do it. But I wouldn't put anyone on the list as like, oh, that guy's gonna run. Maybe Will Howard, depending on kind of where they're at the time.
Probably the best athlete of the six that Nebraska has left to play is Will Howard, unless you want to put Kurtis Rourke on that list. Rourke, he ran some option at Ohio. This is his sixth year of college, and he's been around the MAC and was more of a runner at Ohio, but he's not at all a runner at Indiana. 44 yards for the season, 2 touchdowns on the ground, but they don't want to run him.
Yeah, I don't think there's really much to be concerned, but I wouldn't have said that with Altmaier either. So I think the first point about Illinois having a really good scheme and game planning really well against Nebraska's defense, that still hits, and that's okay. Like it doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world. It doesn't mean you need to throw your entire coaching staff out the window just because they get beat one game. I think they found a pretty good way to bounce back from that game, as you could tell. Nebraska's defense right now is the number 1 rated defense in SP Plus. Number 1. It's the best. So, if you lose,
pick that apart. Yeah.
If you lose one game, because for whatever reason, it's tough to swallow, but I don't think it's the end of the world. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater or something like that.
Don't do that, Connor.
No, wasn't planning on it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at the rest of the schedule, Mordecai is of course gone from Wisconsin, as is the Badgers starter from the beginning of the year, Tyler Van Dyke, the Miami transfer. So they have Braden Locke, who's taken over at quarterback and is doing well throwing the ball. He doesn't run it. Cade McNamara doesn't run it. Ethan Garbers from UCLA doesn't run it. Miller Moss from USC doesn't run it. So Nebraska is going to face a lot of quarterbacks who want to stay in the pocket for the rest of the season. And I think if you ask Tony White about that, he'd say, they'll take it. That's good.
Right, cool. Yeah.
It is much more difficult to scheme against a quarterback when you have to devote a defensive player or change what you're doing with your pass rush because that QB presents a threat.
Question number 2. Let's go to Patrick here, talking about Indiana's offense as it pertains to Nebraska's defense. Has Kurtis Rourke faced a defense as confusing to read before the snap as Nebraska's? Is Tony White's key to victory making Rourke uncomfortable with his eyes and in the pocket?
Well, I can't tell you what Charlotte and the teams on now they played 3 Big Ten teams. Indiana has UCLA, Maryland, and Northwestern, who aren't necessarily now. Northwestern is a defensive oriented team, defensive oriented head coach. I don't honestly know where those teams rank among the Big Ten teams in conventional wisdom as far as disguising things that will potentially mess up a quarterback. Illinois was a team that when Nebraska played Illinois, that was a big talking point before the game, is this Bielema system. They're very good at not showing anything about what they're going to do pre-snap. And for Dylan Raiola, this was going to be a big challenge, his first Big Ten game. Look, here's what I will say about that. Kurtis Rourke has started 33 games. Well, he started 33 games at Ohio. He started 39 games in his college career. So I don't think he's the best guy to game plan against by trying to confuse him. I think he's seen a lot, and the best thing that Tony White and Nebraska can do is to go with the game plan that is going to work and not worry so much about deception and confusion, because he'll be able to sniff that out.
That's not the first thing. I know that was initially the sort of the talking point with this defense. Like, hey, you don't know where they're coming from, and
well,
there still might be a little bit of that. Like they could use that to their advantage, but that's not why Nebraska's defense is good. Nebraska's defense is good is because it has good players and they execute well. And so that'll be the challenge against Kurtis Rourke. And frankly, as we've talked about before, I think it fits into what they're like. Nebraska wants to keep it in front of them. They want to prevent those big plays from happening. They'll continue to do that. They've been pretty good against the run. So you're just limited in what you can do. And then you better score when you get over across the 40-yard line, talking to the other team. You better score. And Nebraska's been really, really good at preventing that from happening as well. So I think it's just a straight up, like, I don't think there's really many games to it. I just think it's a straight up really fun matchup between a good offense and a good defense.
That's some of the evolution of this defense through 18 games for Tony White. And Tony talked about that on Tuesday this week when he was visiting with the media about getting out of his comfort zone as a defensive coordinator. That's really important for him, I think, in his quest to be a head coach, is that he's able to do things that are not like right inside the box of what he learned in his career on the West Coast and then at Arizona State and Syracuse. Like he wants to be multiple. That's kind of the buzzword in football. Like he wants to be able to do it all. And they're showing some of that this year. Like he's not all been 3-3-5. And it wasn't all 3-3-5 last year, but I think there's more variation in what Tony White's doing. So it's beneficial, of course, for Nebraska if Kurtis Rourke and the Indiana offense don't know what's coming at them. But more than that, I think it's just line up and let's just play physical football. And if you, Indiana, can handle that and still do your thing and score your 40 points, then you deserve to win the game.
Yeah.
All right. Before we go to break, question, and this was another one that's been sitting in the email inbox. I'm sorry to all of our listeners and viewers who have been emailing us and haven't been getting responses. There were only a couple of you. We had
we're still sorry.
Shane earlier, and this is Zachary. We were not ignoring Zachary. I want to revisit a question that included quite a bit of commentary. Zachary predicted that Nebraska would lose against Illinois, and he has a lot of concerns about 3 coaches in particular on Matt Rhule's staff, and they are Ed Foley, the special teams coordinator, who you may have guessed, Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator, and wide receivers coach Garrett McGuire. The main reason that Zachary explains it in his email to us is the performance of those groups aside, is that Rhule should be hiring coaches with a track record of excellence that have typically produced top 25 results. Okay, that's from his email. He says that Satterfield and Foley have not done that, and McGuire, his argument, is just too young to be in this position as a first-time primary position coach. He's bullish, Zachary is, the emailer, on Dylan Raiola, but he believes that the quarterback needs upgrades at OC and wide receivers coach to unleash his Heisman potential.
I'll tell you how Matt Rhule thinks about it. As far as the youth is concerned, like this has been talked about a lot. I mean, it might be at times hard to work for Matt Rhule. Like he wants a lot out of you. Like that's working all the time. And so, we were talking about the little clip the other day where Rhule was there at 4:30 and he fell asleep in his office. Well, guess who else is there at 4:30? Garrett McGuire, right? So like they not only think he's a really good coach, but he works hard, and he'll have some opportunities, I think, coming down the line, obviously as well, to be whatever he wants to be in the business. So I don't think he cares about the age. He's said that before. And the other thing is, like, we can't it's hard to do this because we can't put a thumb on exactly what it is, but the continuity within the staff it's been proven over and over again that it's really important, especially in a conference like this. It just is. And so I want the staff to, when things get bad, to be speaking the same language and to not have to go into these ruts and stuff like that, and to be able to have frank conversations with each other. And I think that's what they're doing over there right now. Not that every coach is the best coach on earth, but you just like the fantasy build a staff thing is just so crazy to me. It's not going to happen, especially under this coach.
If you like the head coach and you like who he's bringing in as far as the players, and you like the direction of his program, then part of the deal, I think, I mean, you can think what you want, but I think part of the deal is you have to trust who he picks to put in positions to coach the team.
Yeah.
And that's my answer for the Satterfield and Foley stuff as his coordinators. If you believe in what he did with Tony White and how he went about that process, then I think you should trust in his process and his belief system to bring in other coaches too. If he starts going 4-8 in year 3 or 4, okay, we can have a different discussion about that. And with McGuire, I think it's just totally off base. I think Garrett McGuire is going to be a head coach in college football. Yep. I think he's going to be an offensive coordinator before he's 30. Ask his players how they feel. Ask the guys that he recruits out of the transfer portal, the guys that he recruits out of high school, what they think about his ability to coach them on the field and coach them in games and bring them along. I mean, is he Terrence Knighton? Is he the same guy who's molding some of these players into men like we've heard? No, but all coaches have their strengths, and there's a lot of strengths with Garrett.
No doubt about it. Let's take a break. We'll come back. More questions in the mailbag coming up. Thank you for subscribing to Locked On Nebraska, whether it's on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, social media. We're on like all the social medias now. If TikTok. You want, yeah, we're on TikTok. We are. I saw myself on TikTok the other day. It was very confusing. So we'll be back after this. All right, let's have a moment here to talk about the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get the hunch in the middle of a game, and you can head over to the FanDuel Sportsbook app right then and there, check out the latest live stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on that same page where you place your bets. You can watch, it's basically your kind of GameCast app right there as well. Live bets is a very fun way to go if you're watching 7 games at the same time, which you might be doing this coming Saturday or Sunday. FanDuel.com, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, we're back. Let's keep rolling here with the mailbag questions. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. This is a question from Jim on YouTube. It's actually more of a comment, but we're going to address it anyway. He believes that Indiana is set to use disguised blitzes and a mix of coverages to confuse Dylan Raiola. Jim says if Raiola is burning Indiana with the deep ball, the Hoosiers will switch to more zone coverage. Interesting. Yeah. I saw the stats going around yesterday about how Dylan Raiola does with zone coverage. Kind of interesting.
Right. Indiana's a zone team. Indiana plays zone coverage, and if they're switching it to anything, now they had a bye week, so you could implement an entire new defense. I kind of doubt that's the case when you're 6-0. They're going to come out and they're going to play zone, and maybe they'll want to play mix in some man. It's a young quarterback. It's his second game ever on the road. It's arguably the best team that he's faced in his career.
Mitch, why do teams play zone? Because they can't guard in man.
Yeah, that's a good maybe oversimplified explanation. But if you don't have the athletes to match up in zone, then who was it? Was it Purdue? We saw Purdue, their answer for not being able to match up against the Nebraska wide receivers was just to commit pass interference penalties every time the ball was thrown downfield.
That's right.
You could also play zone and get help over the top from safeties. And I think Curt Cignetti and his way of coaching is more inclined to do it that way. No commentary on Purdue, but will Purdue go with some man? Yeah, I think probably, because Dillon has proven himself to be a better quarterback against zone, and that's what I wanted. Why do you think Dillon has been good? I don't know if that runs a little bit contradictory to what you might think for a true freshman coming into college, that he would be better. Zone's harder to diagnose, like to know where the players are going to be. So why do you think Dillon's been better against zone, which is again Indiana's primary defensive look?
He is already the best quarterback at Nebraska that I've ever seen at not predetermining where he's going to throw the football, but throwing a guy open or throwing the football to a receiver before he is open. Before he gets into his break, like knowing where a guy is going to be. It's incredible. Some of the stuff that not only happens during the game, but you get the cut up. So the NFL scouts or whatever have on Sunday, and they're kind of just floating around there, and they're like, whoa, what? That guy was not even open. Like he made that throw, and he did it so calmly, he did it so nonchalantly. Like you can't, if you're in zone, there's no defense for that. Like you can't guard it. And so that's why he's been so good at it, because he's really, really talented, and he does his homework, and he knows where guys are going to be.
And he has an ability to throw, like over a level of linebackers. There have been multiple times this year where he's thrown a pass and I've thought that's going to get picked, and it doesn't even come close to getting picked because of the trajectory and the ability to drop balls in that he's had, like over a linebacker in front of a DB, and that's against zone coverage. It's unfortunate that we don't get more opportunities in season to be able to talk to Glenn Thomas, to be able to talk to Nebraska's position coaches. We get Satterfield, but he's more big picture offensive stuff. I'd like to know, and at some point we'll hear from Glenn Thomas again. Maybe it'll be before the bowl game, about the way that Dillon works against the zone. And maybe that'll be a big factor in this game. It's certainly not something we talked about. We spent Wednesday's episode talking about overlooked storylines. That might be one, is that Indiana's a zone defense team and Dillon's a quarterback who kills zone defense. So who adjusts first, and what's the cat and mouse game like? But in talking with Jeff Christensen, did get to talk to him during the season, Dillon's off-season, even in-season, like sounding board. In off-season, it's more just like in-depth quarterback discussion, work, physical activity. He talks about throwing receivers open. It's a huge part of his philosophy and what he wants his guys to do. And you can do that against man coverage, absolutely. But it works against the zone too. And Dillon's just really good at it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Really, the answer to the question was he's really good. So he can. He can kind of take what the defense is giving him. That's for sure. Yeah. We get several comments on YouTube about how why Matt Rhule might be laying on the floor while watching film. This is good. We could do a whole episode of a deep.
My favorite topic of the week.
Yeah, deep breakdown on this. One commenter theorized that perhaps Rhule is taller than his couch is long. Now I don't know. I'm
throwing that away.
Nope. Yeah, he's got a pretty big. We'll check on the couch eventually, but I would imagine that it's a pretty big couch.
Yeah, I mean, he could put a bed in there if he wanted to put a bed in there, and maybe he did. But Rhule's got a nice big office. I'm sure he's got a big couch in there. I don't think that really explains much of anything. So there is a lot of discussion about this topic of Matt Rhule and being awoken by Dylan Raiola on Monday morning this week at somewhere around 5:30 in the morning. And then, of course, we discussed yesterday what it was that Dylan hit with the door. Was it Matt Rhule's head? Was it a book? Was it a football? Was it an iPad? We're not quite sure. We may never get answers on that, but it's made for some good conversation this week.
Well, it sounds like a perfect time for one of those athletic oral histories. I love those stories when they go back and they pick a moment and they talk to kind of everybody. Yeah. It sounds like
I get it. And then there's like the different quotes from different people, and you could have like Raiola and his quote, and then Rhule and his quote, and then like Susan Elza. Like sometimes I go into the office at 5:15 and, Coach Rhule's asleep, or Coach Rhule's awake, or Coach Rhule's on the floor, something like that. So I look forward very much to being able to tell that. Although I would say I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Probably not. All right, let's take another break here. We still have several questions. Yes. We'll go rapid fire when we come back here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
All right, a timeout here to tell you about a new sponsor of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. It is Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments in your life happen spontaneously. We know your schedule is busy. If you don't have time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED, through Hims, you can get a personalized treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online. No insurance is needed. One low price covers everything. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's hims.com/lockedon for your personalized treatments. Products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary on products and subscription plans. Okay, final segment on this Thursday show, second to last episode of the week. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic here with Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone in Omaha. I am off to Indy in Bloomington in less than 24 hours, but that will not stop us from finishing the week. We got stuff to go over from week 7. How did it go? That's all coming up on the Friday pod. Be sure to listen to that. Speaking of my Friday travels, I leave Omaha at 7:10 a.m. And yesterday we talked about the difficulty of traveling to Indianapolis because there are no direct flights, and questioned my decision to not fly on Delta through Minneapolis or on United through Chicago. I'm going on Southwest through Denver. Bad idea. Jacob Kraus on YouTube with a message for me saying he can easily rationalize flying west to travel east because it's still better than driving.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. That's always been the case, but it's just hard for my brain to understand. Like if you're going west to go east, your brain thinks, oh, there has to be a better way. There's definitely a more efficient route to this, but sometimes there's not. So you're only going to be flying for 5 hours. It's really not that bad. It's way better than driving, obviously. Yeah. So I don't know. It's fine. It's just my brain doesn't work like that.
I don't like flying 5 hours to go to a city that's actually drivable. I don't mind flying for 5 hours total with a layover if it's East Coast or West Coast. But this was just a poor planning on my part.
Okay.
I'm looking for suggestions if anybody's got any good ones on new series or potentially movies that they've seen recently that I can fire up on the mobile device while I'm on Southwest tomorrow. So feel free to chime in.
Love that.
You want to get us to this question from frequent contributor, German Belgian Waffle.
German Belgian Waffle writes in, do you guys see a rule change due to Dan Lanning's admission that he put 12 on the field on the second to last play with 10 seconds left against Ohio State in order to burn clock and basically keep the Buckeyes out of field goal range? Yes, we do. In fact, perfect timing. It happened. They immediately patched the loophole yesterday. The NCAA.
Has that ever happened before?
We do this a lot now. We have a lot of, and I'm not saying it's an overreaction. Maybe it's something that they just thought, hey, this is simple. It'll never happen again. Let's just do it. So the hole is closed and nobody tries it this week. But like, wow, we're changing a whole rule just because one interpretation of it popped up in an important moment on Saturday. What a reaction by the NCAA.
Do you think if this had happened to Iowa State instead of Ohio State, that it would have been a significant reaction, as significant as we saw in the immediate aftermath?
Probably not. Much less people were watching the Iowa State game this past weekend.
Yeah. Hey, look, Dan Lanning, credit to him, and they admitted, or they kind of patted themselves on the back a little bit. Like, look what we did. We took vital seconds away from Ohio State in its bid to get in field goal range. If it had gone differently, and it could have gone differently, because it's tough to give a team 5 free yards when you only need about 12 to get into field goal range in the last seconds of a game. If it had gone differently and it hadn't worked out, do you think that Oregon would have admitted that it put 12 men on the field on purpose?
Right. Well, or probably not. Or they could have just not committed the penalty and the same result happened and nobody's talking. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't help them. It didn't help them that
it just
much.
Took seconds off the clock for a play that didn't matter.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. Sean on YouTube wants to know, where is the signature win so far on Indiana's schedule this season? Probably a quick answer here.
Well, there is none, but let's say whoever you like better between Maryland and Northwestern.
Yeah. Well, they played.
Oh, yeah.
Maryland and Northwestern played, and it wasn't close. Northwestern blew out Maryland last week.
Northwestern smashed them. So Northwestern, the Northwestern game, that was their big win.
Yeah, not signature. So I think it's like a rhetorical question here from Sean. Like they don't have a signature win. Would Nebraska be a signature win for Curt Cignetti and Indiana? I'll take it to a second level.
It'd be their best win so far. I think from their standpoint, they have a lot of those opportunities coming up in the second half of their season. I mean, they still have a trip to Columbus. They still have Michigan at home. They still have Washington at home. Like, I don't know that, I don't think the Washington game is bigger than the Nebraska game, considering all the hoopla that's going to be on campus for them this weekend. Like, this is a huge game for them. So, yeah, I think this would be a really, really notable win for Curt Cignetti. More notable than any of their 6 so far by far.
Washington's bigger in the sense that it played for the national championship last year and Nebraska did not. But big noon kickoff, like all the eyes, chance to go 7-0. They're still undefeated. This is I'd agree. This is clearly the biggest one on their schedule so far, and one of the biggest potentially one of the biggest of the season. Does Indiana, did their fans come on the field if they win this game?
Ooh, good one. Probably, right? Sold out.
You think? I say no. Well, yeah, sold out. I still think no. How many Nebraska fans in the stadium?
Let's say it's hard. It's always going to be hard to tell because it's red on red. A few will make their way out there. I don't know, 15-20% of the stadium, something like that. I'm not sure.
Doing the math here. So it's a 60,000 seat stadium. I think 5,000 to 10,000. The last time Nebraska played at Indiana was 2016. That was the Tommy Armstrong game. Not pretty on the numbers. I went back and looked at the stats this week. 27-22 was the final.
That's right.
Armstrong, Tommy was under 50% on his throws, and
huge catch by Stanley Morgan to basically win the game and get Nebraska to 7-0 in 2016.
Before it went to Wisconsin and lost in overtime, and then had a bad day at Ohio State.
Yeah.
All right. Andrew on YouTube. Why don't you read this one and then I'll do the final one.
Okay. Andrew. He sees a better coach in Indiana. He sees a better coach Colorado, noting that the Hoosiers score a lot of points in the fourth quarter, 80 points, by the way, in their 6 fourth quarters this year. A better coached Colorado. Indiana is a better coached Colorado. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's a stretch. It's a little bit of there's some similarities there, I think, in the style of offense that Indiana wants to play. They have a quarterback who can throw it around. He's not Shedeur Sanders in his talent, but Rourke very good, maybe more efficient in some ways than Shadur. No, actually, I'm going to say no on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I've been thinking about this comp all week too. Indiana might not be as good as Colorado, to be honest with you. Now, that doesn't mean anything from the Nebraska standpoint as far as this game is concerned, because as we know, like, Nebraska hasn't been able to find the edge that got them out to a 28-0 lead the remainder of the season, and they're on the road here. So, like, if it's Colorado versus Indiana, I think that's a pretty fun game to watch. So there's probably a lot of points on the scoreboard too. But Colorado has probably the two best players in the, two of the 10 best players in the country, and their quarterback and their wide receiver / DB. Indiana's really good. The comp is there. I understand it, but man, it's interesting.
The better coached part, I'll agree with. I do think that Indiana, I don't know that if you put Indiana's players, if you put Colorado's coaches with Indiana here in everything that's gone on in Bloomington the last 9 months, 10 months, that there's any chance that they would be 6-0 with Deion Sanders and his staff. But I would tend to agree. Indiana is a better coach team. Colorado, perhaps a better team, certainly a more talented team.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, a question from Mitch. That's me. So we are going to make this a poll question. If you go to our YouTube page, you can click on the community tab, and we've now got poll questions. So we put some of them on Twitter, but check the YouTube page and interact with us there. So my question is this: ahead of the Friday predictions podcast, what do you more likely envision, and in what order do you see these options as likely on Saturday? A close Indiana win, so we're going 9 points or fewer. A close Nebraska win, a big Indiana win, 10 points or more, or a big Nebraska win. Usually when you have a game that is a touchdown or less in the spread, you can envision maybe 3 of those 4 scenarios as happening. And then there's like a fourth one, like in the Rutgers game, I would have said, I don't envision a Rutgers blowout win in this game. Like I could see any other scenario, but I don't see a Rutgers blowout win. For me in this game, I legitimately could see any of the 4 as a possibility.
I could see all 4. Now ranking them is harder.
Maybe we don't rank them because we don't want to give away what our predictions are in the game if we haven't already done that.
Our proprietary picks, which don't come out until tomorrow. So
we need you to listen Friday.
Okay, so let me ask it to you this way then before we get out of here. If it is a shootout, if there are many points on the board, what are the chances that Nebraska wins that game?
Well, I mean, I think it's less than 50%. I like Indiana's chances better, in part because it's at home and it has a quarterback who's starting the 40th game of his career, and they've done nothing but taste success this season, while Nebraska track record has done very little other than taste bitter defeat in that situation. Certainly in a shootout, Nebraska's not a team that's going to be well adjusted, but I do think that if Nebraska gets in that spot, it has the capability, it has the athletes that it didn't have last year to be able to score points in a hurry. So I like Indiana if it's a shootout, but I'm not counting Nebraska out.
The total at this very moment on the FanDuel Sportsbook is 50.5.
That's pretty low.
Yeah. Let's say we're both in the low 20s. Who do you like to win that game?
I like Nebraska more in that situation.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. So we'll have plenty more on that tomorrow on the show. Appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, listening all the time. And of course, making this your first listen of the day. We got your second listen covered as well. It's the Locked On College Football podcast. You could check it out. It's in the link is in the description to this episode. You don't have to go very far to click on it. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.